Again, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another extension of Life and Times. I'm your host, Warren McDonald, and today we are profiling an American film icon, Lucille Fay Lesueur, better known as Joan Crawford. Joan Crawford was born March 23, 1904, and she is an American film and television actress who started as a dancer, and in 1999, the American Film Institute ranked Crawford 10th on their list of the greatest female stars of classic Hollywood cinema. Beginning her career as a dancer in traveling theatrical companies before debuting as a chorus girl on Broadway, Crawford signed a motion picture contract with Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer in 1925. In the 1930s, Crawford's fame rivaled and later outlasted MGM colleagues Norma Shearer and Greta Garbo. Crawford often played hard-working young women who find romance and success. These stories were well received by the Depression-era audiences and were popular with women. Crawford became one of Hollywood's most prominent movie stars and one of the highest-paid women in the United States, but her films began losing money, and by the end of the 30s, she was labeled box office poison. But her career gradually improved in the early 1940s when she made a major comeback in 1945 by starring in Mildred Pierce, for which she won the Academy Award for Best Actress. She would go on to receive Best Actress nominations for Possessed in 1947 and Sudden Fear in 1952. And her first 3 marriages ended in divorce. The last ended with the death of husband Alfred Steele. She adopted 5 children, one of whom was reclaimed by his birth mother, and Crawford's relationships with her 2 older children, Christina and Christopher, were acrimonious at best. Crawford disinherited the 2, and after Crawford's death, Christina wrote a tell-all memoir titled Mommy Dearest, which was later turned into a major feature film from the beginning. Crawford was born Lucille Fay Lesueur in San Antonio, Texas. And we know it was March 23rd was her birthday, but the year is disputed. It's either 1904, 5, or 6 are the most likely estimates. Her parents were basically laborers, and Thomas Lesueur, her father, abandoned the family a few months before Crawford's birth, but reappeared in Abilene, Texas in 1930 as a reportedly 62-year-old construction laborer. However, after his death on January 1, 1938, at the age given as 71, Crawford's mother subsequently married Henry J. Casson. The marriage is listed in census records as Crawford's mother's first marriage, calling into question whether Thomas Lesueur and Annabelle Johnson were ever really legally wed. The family lived in Lawton, Oklahoma, where Casson, a minor impresario, ran the Ramsey Opera House. Despite his relatively minor status as an impresario, Casson managed to get such diverse and noted performers as Anna Pavlova and Eva Tanguay during his career. Young Lucille was reportedly unaware that Casson, who she called Daddy, was not her biological father until her brother Hal told her. Lucille preferred the nickname Billy as a child, and she loved watching vaudeville acts perform on the stage of her stepfather's theater. The instability of her family life affected her education, and her schooling never formally progressed beyond elementary school. She was to be a dancer. However, one day, in an attempt to escape piano lessons to play with friends, she leapt from the front porch of her home and cut her foot deeply on a broken milk bottle. She had 3 operations and was unable to attend elementary school for 8 months. She eventually fully recovered and returned to dancing. Now, Casson was accused of embezzlement and, although acquitted in court, was blacklisted in Lawton, and the family moved to Kansas City, Missouri around 1916. Casson was first listed in the city directory in 1917, and a Catholic, he placed Crawford at St. Agnes Academy in Kansas City. After her father and mother broke up, she stayed on at St. Agnes as a work student, where she spent far more time working, primarily cooking and cleaning, than studying. Later, she went to Rockingham Academy. also was a work student, and while attending Rockingham, she began dating and had her first serious relationship with a trumpet player named Ray Sterling, who reportedly inspired her to begin challenging herself academically. In 1922, she registered at Stevens College, giving her year of birth as 1906. She attended Stevens for only a few months before withdrawing after she realized she was not prepared for college. Talking about her career, right now, under the name Lucille Lesueur, Crawford began dancing in the choruses of traveling venues and was spotted dancing in Detroit by producer Jacob Schubert. Schubert put her in the chorus line for his 1924 show Innocent Eyes at the Winter Garden Theater on Broadway in New York City. And while appearing in Innocent Eyes, Crawford met a saxophone player named James Welton. The two were allegedly married in 1924 and lived together for several months, although this supposed marriage was never mentioned in later life by Crawford. Crawford wanted additional work and approached Loew's Theater publicist Neil Granlund. Granlund secured a position for her with producer Harry Richmond's act and arranged for her to do a screen test, which he sent to producer Harry Rapp in Hollywood. Now, stories have persisted, further supplemented to her income, that she appeared in one or more stag or softcore pornographic films, although this has been disputed. So, December 24th, 1924, that MGM had offered Crawford a contract at $75 a week. And he immediately wired Lesueur, who had returned to her mother's home in Kansas City, with the news. She borrowed $400 for travel expenses and then departed Kansas City on December 26th, arriving in Culver City, California on January 1st, 1925. Credited as Lucille Lesueur in her first film, Lady of the Night in 1925, as the body double for MGM's most popular female star, Norma Shearer. She also appeared in The Circle and Pretty Ladies, both in 1925, starring comedian Zazu Pitts. This was soon followed by equally small and unbilled roles in two other 1925 successes, The Only Thing and The Merry Widow. So immediately she was a very busy, hard-working actress, which is a good thing when you're a new star. MGM publicity head Pete Smith recognized her ability to become a major star, but felt her name sounded fake. So he told studio head Louis B. Mayer that her name, Lesueur, reminded him of a sewer. Smith organized a contest called Name the Star in Movie Weekly to allow readers to select her stage name. The initial choice was Joan Arden, but after another actress was found to have prior name claim to this, the alternate surname Crawford became the choice. Crawford later said that she wanted her first name to be pronounced Joanne and that she hated the name Crawford because it sounded like crawfish, but also admitted she liked the security that went with it. Now, growing frustrated over the size and quality of self-promotion, as MGM screenwriter Frederica Maas recalled, "No one Crawford a star. Joan Crawford became a star because Joan Crawford decided to become a star. She began attending dances at hotels around Hollywood, where she often won dance competitions with her performances of the Charleston and the Black Bottom." Her strategy worked, and MGM cast her in the film where she made an impression to audiences, which was Edmund Goulding's Sally, Irene, and Mary. From the beginning of her career, Crawford considered Norma Shearer, the studio's most popular actress, her professional nemesis. Since Shearer was married to MGM head of production Irving Thalberg, she had the first choice of scripts and had more control than other stars in what films she would and would not make. Crawford was quoted to have said, "How can I compete with Norma? She sleeps with the boss." In 1926, Crawford was named one of Wampa's baby stars, along with Mary Astor, Dolores Del Rio, Janet Gaynor, and Faye, among others. That same year, she starred in Paris, co-starring Charles Ray, and within a few years, she became the romantic female lead to many of MGM's top stars, including Raymond Navarro, John Gilbert, William Haynes, and Tim McCoy. Crawford appeared in 1927 in The Unknown, starring Lon Chaney Sr., who played a carnival knife thrower with no arms. Crawford played his skimpily clad young carnival assistant whom he hopes to marry. She stated that she learned more about acting from watching Chaney work than from anyone else in her career. It was then, she said, I became aware for the first time of the difference between standing in front of a camera and acting. Also in 1927, she appeared alongside her close friend William Haynes in Spring Fever, which was the first of 3 movies the duo made together. In 1928, she starred opposite Ramon Navarro in Across to Singapore, but it was a role as Diane Medford in Our Dancing Daughters that catapulted her to stardom. The role established her as a symbol of modern 1920s-style femininity, which rivaled Clara Bow, the original It Girl, then Hollywood's most foremost flapper at the time. A stream of hits followed Our Dancing Daughters, including 2 more flapper-themed movies, in which Crawford embodied for her legion of fans an idealized vision of the free-spirited, all-American girl. Great 20th century novelist F. Scott Fitzgerald wrote of Crawford, Joan Crawford is doubtless the best example of the flapper, the girl you see in smart nightclubs, gowned to the apex of sophistication, toying iced glasses with a remote, faintly bitter expression, dancing deliciously, laughing a great deal with wide, hurt eyes. Young things with a talent for living. June 3rd, 1929, Crawford married Douglas Fairbanks Jr. at St. Malachy's Roman Catholic Church in Manhattan, although neither was Catholic. Fairbanks was the son of Douglas Fairbanks and the stepson of Mary Pickford, who were considered Hollywood royalty. Fairbanks Sr. and Pickford were opposed to the marriage and did not invite the couple to their home, Pickfair, for 8 months after the marriage. The relationship between Crawford and Fairbanks Sr. eventually warmed, and she called him Uncle Doug and he called her Billy, her childhood nickname. Following the first invitation, Crawford and Fairbanks Jr. became more frequent guests, which was hard on Crawford. While the Fairbanks men played golf together, Crawford was left either with Pickford or all alone. Herself of her southwestern accent, Crawford tirelessly practiced diction and elocution. She said, "If I were to speak lines, it would be a good idea, I thought, to read aloud to myself, listen carefully to my voice quality and enunciation, and try to learn in that manner. I would lock myself into a room and read newspapers, magazines, and books aloud. At my elbow, I kept a dictionary. When I came to a word I did not know how to pronounce, I looked it up and repeated it correctly 15 times. A jazz singer in 1927, the first major Hollywood movie with synchronized sound. Sound films, or talkies, as they became nicknamed, were all the rage. The transition from silent to sound panicked many, if not all, involved in the film industry, and many silent film stars found themselves unemployable because of their undesirable voices or hard-to-understand accents, or simply because of their refusal to make the transition to talkies. Many studios and stars avoided making the transition as long as possible, especially MGM, which was the last studio to switch over to sound. The Hollywood Review of 1929 was one of the studio's first all-sound films, and their first attempt to showcase their stars' ability to make the transition from silent to sound. Crawford was among the dozen or more MGM stars included in that movie, and she sang the song "Got a Feeling for You" during the film's first act. Successful transition to talkies. Her first starring role in an all-sound feature-length film was Untamed in 1929, co-starring Robert Montgomery. Despite the success of the film at the box office, it received mixed reviews from critics, who noted that while Crawford seemed nervous at making the transition to sound, they also noted that she had become one of the most popular actresses in the world. Montana Moon in 1930, an uneasy mix of Western cliches and music, teamed her with John Mack Brown and Ricardo Cortez. Although the film had problems with censors, it was a major success at the time of its release. Our Blushing Brides in 1930, again co-starring Robert Montgomery and Anita Page, was the final installment of the so-called Our Dancing Daughters franchise. It was a greater success both critically and financially than her previous talkies, and became one of her personal favorites. Her next movie, Paid, in 1930, paired her with Robert Armstrong and was another success. During the early sound era, MGM began to place Crawford in more sophisticated roles rather than continuing to promote her flapper-inspired persona of the silent era. In 1931, MGM cast Crawford in 5 films. 3 of them teamed her opposite the studio's biggest male star and the king of Hollywood, Clark Gable. Dance Fools Dance, released in February 1931, was the first pairing of Crawford and Gable. Their second movie together, Laughing Sinners, was directed by Harry Beaumont and also co-starred Neil Hamilton. Possessed was their third film together and was released in October and was directed by Clarence Brown. These films were immensely popular with audiences and were generally well received by critics, stapling Crawford's position as one of the MGM's top female stars of the decade, along with Norma Shear, Greta Garbo, and Jean Harlow. Her only other notable film of 1931, This Modern Age, was released in August and despite unfavorable reviews was a moderate success. MGM next cast her in the film Grand Hotel, directed by Edmund Goulding. As the studio's first all-star production, Crawford co-starred opposite Greta Garbo and John and Lionel Barrymore and Wallace Beery, among others. Receiving third billing, she played the middle-class stenographer to Beery's controlling general dictator. Crawford later admitted to being nervous during the filming of the movie because she was working with very big stars and that she was disappointed that she had no scenes with the divine Garbo. Grand Hotel was released in April 1932 to critical and commercial success. It was the highest-grossing movie of the year and won the Academy Award for Best Picture. Crawford continued to achieve success in Letty Linton in 1932, and soon after the movie's release, a plagiarism suit forced MGM to withdraw. For many years, it was never shown on television nor made available on home video, and is therefore considered the lost Crawford film. The gown with large ruffled sleeves, designed by Adrian, which Crawford wore in the movie, became a popular style that same year and was even copied by Macy's. On loan out to United Artists, she played prostitute Sadie Thompson in Rain in 1932. It's a film version of John Colton's 1923 play. And Crawford's performance was panned and the film was not a success, but despite this failure, the publishing of the first top 10 money-making stars poll placed Crawford third in popularity at the box office, behind only Marie Dressler and Janet Gaynor. She remained on the list for the next several years, last appearing on it in 1936. In 1933, Crawford divorced Fairbanks, citing grievous mental cruelty, claiming Fairbanks had a jealous and suspicious attitude towards her friends and that they had had loud arguments about the most trivial subjects lasting far into the night. Following her divorce, she was again teamed with Clark Gable, along with Franchot Tone and Fred Astaire in the hit The Dancing Lady, in which she received for the first time top billing. She next played the title role in Sadie McGee and was paired with Gable for the fifth time in Chained and for the sixth time in Forsaking All Others. Crawford films of this era were some of the most popular and highest-grossing films of the mid-1930s. In 1935, Crawford married Tone, a stage actor from New York, who planned to use his film earnings to finance his theater group. The couple built a small theater at Crawford's Brentwood home and put on productions of classic plays for select groups and friends. Tone and Crawford had first appeared together in Today We Live in 1933, but Crawford was hesitant about entering into another romance so soon after her split from Fairbanks. Now, even though Crawford remained a respected MGM actress and her films still earned profits, her popularity declined in the late 1930s. In 1937, she was proclaimed the first queen of the movies by Life magazine. She unexpectedly slipped from 7th to 16th place at the box office that year, and her public popularity also began to wane. She also co-starred with Franchot Tone for the seventh and final time, and the film was unfavorably reviewed by a majority of critics, with one critic calling it the same old rags to riches story that Crawford had been making for years. It was also a financial loss, and it did not resurrect Crawford's popularity, even though she received positive reviews. Now, in 1938, Crawford, along with Greta Garbo, Norma Shear, Louise Rayner, John Barrymore, Katharine Hepburn, Fred Astaire, and Dolores de Rio, and others were dubbed box office poison in an open letter in the Independent Film Journal. The list was submitted by Harry Brandt, president of the Independent Theater Owners Association of America. Brandt stated that while these stars had unquestioned dramatic abilities, their high salaries did not reflect in their ticket sales, thus hurting the music exhibitors involved. Her follow-up movie, The Shining Hour, co-starring Margaret Sullivan and Melvyn Douglas, was well received by critics, but, again, was a box office flop. She made a bit of a comeback in 1939 with the role as homewrecker Crystal Allen in The Women opposite her professional nemesis, Norma Shear. Well, the film itself was only a moderate success, and her performance was being hailed by many critics as outstanding. During that year, she adopted her first child, a daughter. Because she was single, California law prevented her from adopting within the state, so she arranged the adoption through an agency in Las Vegas. The child was temporarily called Joan until Crawford changed her name to Christina. She later married actor Philip Terry, and after a 6-month courtship, together the couple adopted a son whom they named Christopher, but his birth mother reclaimed the child. The couple adopted another boy, whom they named Philip Terry Jr., but after that marriage ended in 1946, Crawford changed the child's name to Christopher Crawford. After 18 years, Crawford's contract with MGM was terminated by mutual consent on June 29, 1943, and in lieu of the last film remaining under her contract, MGM bought her out for $100,000. During World War II, she was a member of the American Women's Voluntary Services. Now, she moved to Warner Brothers for $500,000 for a 3-movie deal and was placed on the payroll in 1943. Her first film was Hollywood Canteen, an all-star morale booster that teamed her with several other top movie stars at the time. Crawford said one of the main reasons she signed with Warner Brothers was because she wanted to play the character Maddie in a proposed 1944 film version of Edith Wharton's novel Ethan Frome. In 1945, she wanted the title role in Mildred Pierce, but Bette Davis was the studio's first choice. However, Davis turned the role down, so director Michael Curtis did not want Crawford to play the part. Instead, he lobbied for the casting of Barbara Stanwyck. Warner went against Curtis, however, and cast Crawford in the film, and through the entire production of the movie, Curtis criticized Crawford. He'd been quoting as telling Jack Warner, "She comes over here with her high-hat airs and her shoulder pads. Why should I waste my time directing a has-been?" Curtis demanded that Crawford prove her suitability by taking a screen test, and after the test, Curtis agreed to Crawford's casting. Mildred Pierce was a resounding critical and commercial success. It epitomized the lush visual style and the hard-boiled film noir sensibility that defined Warner Brothers movies of the late 40s, and it earned Crawford the Academy Award for Best Actress in a Leading Role. The success of Mildred Pierce revived Crawford's movie career, and for several years she starred in what really were a series of first-rate melodramas about romantic love affairs and various Van Helfen movies. Possessed, Flamingo Road with Henry Fonda. She appeared in It's a Great Feeling, and she even poked fun at her own screen image. By 1950, she starred in the film noir The Damned Don't Cry and starred in Harriet Craig. Completion of This Woman is Dangerous. In 1952, a film Crawford called her worst, she asked to be released from the Warner Brothers contract, and by this time, she felt that the Warners were losing interest in her and decided it was time to move on. Later that same year, she received her third and final Academy Award nomination for Sudden Fear for RKO Radio Pictures. And in 1953, she appeared in her final film for MGM, Torch Song. The movie received favorable reviews and a moderate success at the box office. She adopted 2 more children in 1947, identical twins, whom she named Cindy and Kathy. Now, all of a sudden, she started to get a lot of interest in radio, and she really started working in radio in the 30s, starring in the Screen Guild Theater, Arch Bowler's, Obler's Lights Out, and a number of pilots, including The Joan Crawford Show. Crawford married her 4th and final husband, Alfred Steele, at the Flamingo Hotel in Las Vegas on May 10, 1955. Crawford and Steele met at a party in 1950, and when Steele was an executive at PepsiCo company. They renewed their acquaintance at a New Year's Eve party in 1954, and by that time he had become president of PepsiCo. He would later be the chairman of the board and chief executive officer, and she traveled extensively on behalf of Pepsi following the marriage. She estimated that they traveled over 100,000 miles for the company. Steele died of a heart attack in 1959, and Crawford was initially advised that her services were no longer required. After she told the story to Luella Parsons, Pepsi reversed its position and Crawford was elected to fill the vacant seat on the board of directors. She received the 6th Annual Pally Award, which was in the shape of a bronze Pepsi bottle. It was awarded to the employee making the most significant contribution to company sales. In 1973, Crawford was forced to retire from the company at the behest of company executive Don Kendall, whom Crawford had referred to for years as Fang. After her Academy Award-nominated performance in 1952's Sudden Fear, Crawford continued to work steadily throughout the rest of the decade. She was near penniless following Alfred Steele's death and accepted a small role in The Best of Everything. Although she was not the star of the film, she received positive reviews and would later name the role as being one of her favorites of all time. However, the early 1960s, Crawford's status in motion pictures had declined considerably. As the 60s progressed, she did star in a number of other films, but after a purported campaign of harassment by Davis on location, Louisiana, Crawford returned to Hollywood and entered a hospital. And after a prolonged absence during which Crawford was accused of feigning illness, Aldrich was forced to replace her with Olivia de Havilland in the movie Hush, Hush, Sweet Charlotte. Crawford claimed to be devastated, saying, "I heard the news of my replacement over the radio lying in the hospital bed. I cried for 9 hours." Crawford nursed grudges against David and Aldrich for the saying of Aldrich, "He is a man who loves evil, horrendous, vile things," to which Aldrich replied, "If the shoe fits, wear it, and I am very fond of Miss Crawford." Her demise from the top spot also really cemented her decline. She actually appeared on the Lucy Show a few times and really had difficulties with her alcohol intake. Crawford continued to move towards television as her career declined. She also guest starred as herself on the Lucy Show, and the episode Lucy and the Lost Star first aired on February 26 in 1968. Crawford struggled during rehearsals and drank heavily on set, leading series star Lucille Ball to suggest replacing her with Gloria Swanson. However, Crawford was letter perfect the day of the show, which included dancing the Charleston, and received 2 standing ovations from the studio audience. In October 1968, her 29-year-old daughter Christina needed immediate medical attention for a ruptured ovarian tumor. Despite the fact that Christina's character was a 28-year-old and Crawford was in her 60s, Crawford offered to play her role until Christina was well enough to return, to which producer Gloria Monty readily agreed. Although Crawford did well in rehearsal, she lost her composure while taping, and the director and producer were left to struggle to piece together the necessary footage. In 1970, Crawford was presented with the Cecil B. DeMille Award by John Wayne at the Golden Globes, which was telecast from the Coconut Grove at the Ambassador Hotel in Los Angeles. She also spoke at Stevens College, which she had attended for 4 months in 1922. She published her autobiography, A Portrait of Joan, through Doubleday, and her next book, My Way of Life, was published in 1971 by Simon & Schuster. Those expecting a racy tell-all were disappointed, although Crawford's malicious ways were revealed in her advice on grooming, wardrobe, exercise, and even food storage. Upon her death, there was found in her apartment buildings photographs of John F. Kennedy, for whom she had reportedly voted for in the 1960 presidential election. In September 1973, she moved from apartment 22G to a smaller apartment next door at the Imperial House. Her last public appearance was September 23, 1974, at a party honoring her old friend Rosalind Russell at New York's Rainbow Room. Russell was suffering from breast cancer and arthritis at the time. When Crawford saw the unflattering photos that appeared in the papers the next day, she said, "If that's how I look, then they won't see me anymore," and she canceled all future public appearances, began declining interviews, and left her apartment less and less. Dental-related issues, including surgery, which left her needing around-the-clock nursing care, plagued her from 1972 until 1975. While on antibiotics for this problem, her drinking caused her to pass out, slip, and strike her face. The incident scared her enough to give up drinking, although she insisted it was because of her return to Christian Science. The incident is recorded in a series of letters sent to her insurance company held in the stack files on the third floor of the New York Public Library for the Performing Arts. A film that was put out in 1978, actually I think it was the early 80s, it didn't say when the movie came out, but a book was published by Christina Crawford called Mommy Dearest, which contained allegations that her late adoptive mother was emotionally and physically abusive to her and her brother. Many of Crawford's friends and co-workers denounced the book, categorically denying any abuse, but others, including Betty Hutton and Helen Hayes and Rex Reed, stated they had witnessed some form of abusive behavior. Crawford's secretary confirmed Christina's account. Mommy Dearest became a bestseller and was made into the 1981 biography film Mommy Dearest, starring Faye Dunaway as Joan Crawford. And it was an outstanding performance by Faye Dunaway as well. And the likeness was something else. The makeup and everything really did look like Joan, but it did not portray her as a very nice person. And she's a Hollywood legend nonetheless. And what a career. Thank you very much. This is Life and Times with Warren McDonald. I hope you enjoy this production. Goodbye.